Good evening. Yes, this evening. Uh, Dusk. Two favorite times of the day. Dawn and dusk. Horizontal lighting. Softens everything. But anyway, I did say good evening. And my habit is to do this in the early mornings. But the best thing about habits is the practice of breaking them. I'm far too much a creature of habits. And it's good to shake it up. So here we go, shaking it up. And today, this evening, I found myself earlier today ruminating, contemplating big things. Sometimes I can come down to the realm of literally microscopic quantum physics, but other times, I guess, through the lens of the small, go through the lens of the small and come out to the big side. And that's what happened today. So I want to embrace, I want to attempt to talk about the fabric of life. When I say the fabric of life, I'm talking about what binds us together. And as I'm doing, all that's in my mind is breath. Breathe in, breathe out. And that is it. That's the fabric of life. The stuff we breathe in and we breathe out. The expansion and the contraction. Expansion, contraction. I do get carried away sometimes. But being carried away is a good thing. So this fabric of life, like all true things, we can only talk around it. We could use the other way, it's not this, it's not that. But that's language for another day. Today I'd like to talk around it. See somehow if I could convey the fabric of life. I'll start with recognition. And I'll start on an individual level. When we're at the point that we can recognize a commonality in our surroundings, when we feel close to one and all, so close that separation and division become impossible. We're all of, from, and. From, of. Here I am. The other word will come to me in a minute as I fumble along. But this recognition, this first step, inevitably leads to questions, as does almost any observation, particularly on the spiritual journey. You notice one thing and it leads you to question. It leads you questioning for others. So with this recognition, the first precept, the first practice, the first element of this recognition is steeped in ordinariness. What could be more ordinary in the sense of abundance, so much of it that it's not particularly special. And this is a very, for my purposes, this is how I want to look at it right now. We'll expand upon that because it's the be-all and the end-all, this recognition of the stuff, this questioning to what is this? And I chose fabric of life because fabric to me means bound together. Cotton, bound into strands, sewn together, becomes cloth or fabric. So it's easy when you look at fabric to know from whence it came. But the fabric of life that I'm talking about, no one can or will ever truly know what it consists of. It's everything and nothing all at the same time. And the more I learn, the more I understand how much more there is to learn. And I get involved in the process of taking information to knowledge, to wisdom. And in the structure of wisdom, true wisdom is about how much you don't know, how much you can't know. So for inquiring soul, inquiring mind, this accumulation of knowledge becomes most ultimately, let's say, ultimately becomes that there's more than you can ever know. This is truly wisdom, to know, to accept, to understand that you can't know. I like the analogy of the fish in the water. The fish is surrounded by water, but it can never truly know what water is. Primarily because that's all there is. And that fabric of life is all there is. It's as natural to us as water is to fish. I wonder if a fish ever wakes up and says, I'm in the water. Not likely. Not my lifetime. Not my lifetime anyway. But we, as unique expressions of life, are able to begin to question, get an inkling of, even have glimpses or temporary insights of the fabric of life. Unlike our fish brothers who were never, ancestors who are never to know that they're in the water. Well, I think of one way that they know. Take them out of the water. They can't breathe. Most of them. And I think they immediately know that something's different. Maybe they even know that something's missing. And so it is with us as human beings. We're born with a deep knowing and understanding that it's something within our very basic understanding. We're missing something. And that is this fabric of life. We're surrounded. We're breathing it in and breathing it out, just as the fish in the sea. But for most of us, for a long period of our life, we remain just as naive, just as innocent, just as unknowing of the nature of this fabric of life as does the fish in the water. My analogy falls short because we can't be taken out of this fabric of life as a fish is taken out of water. Because the very nature of this fabric is its inclusiveness. Everything is an aspect of the whole, the fabric. So this recognition brings an acceptance. Most of what's to be known will remain unknown to us. This is amongst the first necessary steps to unfolding, to awakening, is that most will remain unknown. And the next big step is learning to be okay with that. Many of us are trained that our intellect is infallible, and given enough time and effort, everything can be solved. And I spoke a couple days to giving up on solutions and start learning to live with resolutions. You resolve the fact that ultimately there aren't any solutions. Because solutions implies that the infinite requires that for the infinite to become finite. As a math problem, as an equation, we can find the solution. And then we move on to the next equation, the next problem. But resolve will quietly assume the mantle of solutions. And peace comes in from this process. It's silencing the mind, recognizing the limited efficacy of the mind, and ultimately being more than okay with it. In fact, resting assured that it could be no other way. So, resolution. So recognition, resolution, and now what? We recognize that most of everything is that we have limited resources, we have limited abilities, and most of the knowable will remain unknown. You resolve that. You come to terms, and coming to terms leads to coming to peace. And if you get stuck along the process, you always go back to the basic, which is just simply to breathe. Remember to breathe. Okay, so we have recognition, resolution, and our best friend along the way is always surrender. The difference between a solution and a resolution, in fact, is surrender. You can't reach a resolution until you've let go of striving for a solution. And you let go of this striving for a solution by understanding and learning to be better than okay with the limits and not see them as shortcomings. Well, we can't know everything, so that means what? It doesn't mean anything, actually. It just is. So this surrender. Now we have a resolution. And we resolve almost as terms of a pledge. We pledge that even in the face of the unknowable, we continue to do the best that we can. And this is simply not coping. This is much more than coping. This implies an openness and surprise, surprise. Every once in a while there's a little epiphany and you learn another piece of the unknowable becomes the known. But this does not minimize, this does not take away any of the sacredness. Familiarity does not, in this case, breed contempt. In fact, familiarity is a process of itself. Resolution, familiarity, getting used to what the Korean Zen monk said to me years ago. Who is I, me, my? Don't know. And within those don't know comes everything, doesn't it? This acceptance, becoming familiar with the body of the unknowable, coming to terms, giving up questions first, which calls for, if you don't have questions, you don't need solutions. But you can still have resolutions. You can still resolve. Resolve is kind of a pledge or a promise. You can resolve to, I wanted to say continue, but you're going to continue. Everything will continue. The fabric of life continues whether we can accept it or not. So, learning to live with the unknowable, questions cease having a function. And if questions stop, it's pretty obvious that answers are meaningless. What's needed? What's left? Acceptance, participation. And the rewards? Well, the closer that you come to the acceptance of the unknowable. If you learn this, if you know that you can't know until at such a time that you do know, there's no striving, there's no search, there's no journey. And this is when you end up, well, if you want to, look in the mirror. I'm looking at the camera and seeing my image on my computer screen. And just acknowledge that everything is okay. Whatever comes will come. And the challenge for us is acceptance. And acceptance of what? Well, acceptance of most everything will remain in the realm of the unknowable. But when I talk about acceptance, the biggest acceptance for me was involved recognizing the beauty of the ordinary. Within the ordinary is constructed with elements of extraordinary. You take extraordinary and extraordinary and extraordinary and you add it all up, and lo and behold, you come to love being ordinary. You come to cherish. You learn to respect the ordinary. This is the very fabric of life. When we're talking about ordinary, if something is pervasive, it's everything and everywhere, through all linear time or the space-time continuum. No matter where you go, here you are. This acceptance of the universality, this acceptance of unity, oneness. That's the trash truck for those of you not familiar with Taiwan. It came right in the pinnacle. But good for it, because trash has to be taken out as well. But this all searching, striving, progress, if you will, all the changes, all the struggles, all your efforts simply resulted in ordinariness. And that's, I would argue, that's something to celebrate, not decry. If you think you're special in any way, that's a red flag that you're off base. You've got more to learn. More work needs to be done. It's only when you rest in the assurity of your own ordinariness. It's really, truly a beautiful thing. It can't be said too many times. How was your day? Ordinary. And you'll learn to see that that indeed is extraordinary, extraordinary. Again, in the ordinary, or ordinariness is made up of an incredible accumulation of extraordinary circumstance. What brought me to this place where I sit now, sharing and talking to you? Extraordinary series of ordinary occurrences. So just as ordinary is constructed by lots of extraordinary, so too is the extraordinary accomplished by each and every one of us recognizing that how ordinary we are, how ordinary the world is. And in this ordinariness is unity. In this ordinariness lies the understanding of what the fabric of life is. So I could say the fabric of light is the culmination of lots and lots of extraordinary occurrences resulting in the embracing of ordinary. And to flip it, if you can't flip something, if you can't look at something from the other direction, it might not be very useful. So, in the ordinary is this culmination of the extraordinary. So, to be ordinary, to learn to accept oneself and the world we find ourselves and this fabric of life as ordinary, as ubiquitous as water is to a fish, is truly the most profound in the sense of extraordinary. We're led to full circle. We're led to start at the beginning and end at the beginning. This recognition of the uniqueness, the specialness of ordinariness. Embrace it, expound it, share it. Share your ordinariness, and that will be truly extraordinary.